everybody to the Marketing Madness. Today, I have the privilege of speaking to a good friend of mine, Diane Vermooten. She has spent much of her life working with stories as a storyteller, as a teacher, making documentaries, and a practitioner of what makes a good story. She's had the privilege of working in over 20 countries, and she's helped individuals and communities to recognize the value of their own stories, to tell those stories and the potential it has to just share and show the transformation that is at the heart of her work. Diane has worked as a creative director, shaping narrative and meaning, and she's explored how stories carries value through symbols, culture, and language. And I'm very excited to speak to her about that and the value that that can bring. Lately, her curiosity and becoming a grandparent has drawn her into children's books, and she firmly believes that story is where meaning, imagination, and formation works. Diane, thank you very much. We're very excited to have you today on our podcast. Our podcast, Marketing Madness, is for business leaders and founders that want to know how to do better marketing so that they can get more leads, grow their businesses, and thereby create more jobs in our wonderful country, that we can create hope. So welcome and enjoy the ride with us.
So, as you said in my introduction, my husband and I started a Media Village company many years ago, and we have trained students from 93 countries. And at the heart of every student, I found this desire to tell their story. So that's always motivated me as a teacher. And then I also know the maxim that many teachers teach and can't do. So that kind of got me out of the classroom into the world. And then I started doing documentary productions and traveled to over 20 countries. I'm telling a lot of transformation stories, people who looked at the world differently, people who wanted to change the narrative of what they were being told, people who were willing to step out in government, in the textile industries, in law, saying, we are the ones who can bring hope and change. I do have a passion for Africa, and I have traveled fairly extensively in Africa. Just looking at stories of hope, documenting people, women particularly, who are seeing that they can create sustainability, that they can bring about the change in their community. And those stories are not easy. You're working with people who maybe have not been educated in the storytelling, but the story's in their heart. For many years, I traveled with a cameraman and I traveled with a sound man and sometimes even an assistant. Now that I'm telling these African stories, it's just me. So I pack my backpack, my microphone, and my reflector, and off I go into Kenya, Uganda, Ghana, Malawi, and it's just me. It's an interesting scenario of having to attach microphones, hold reflectors. But when I listen to the heart of men and women who are making a difference, that makes a big difference for me. That's really what makes me tick. I love what I do. I love writing. I love creative writing. I've done lots of creative writing workshops, but I love empowering people, whether they are CEOs or the young garage attendant that I trained last year. Every time I rock up there, he goes, Mama, my podcast is getting thousands of views. American artists, they want Capricorn artists. And I feel my heart, I feel my eyes fill with tears, because here's a young man who's a petrol attendant, and he's created a website, and his link, he's telling Capricorn stories about violence, crime, but the hope, and a fire happens and how people came and helped each other. And sometimes I have to say, remember to fill my car. But all he wants to do is tell me his story. It doesn't matter where you are in life, there's power in story.
That's very true. And I think the big thing there is that human connection that you create through stories. I mean, we've spent thousands of years sitting around campfires. We started in Africa, apparently, telling each other stories. And that's how we remember our history, remember the people that's not with us anymore. That's how we connect with each other, to tell our stories. And that's where we're vulnerable. I think in today's age, I work a lot with artificial intelligence as a tool within the marketing space, but also for businesses. And I think what's happening is it's such a powerful tool, but it also creates a space where people want to hark back to what's authentic. I think the listeners of our podcast are mostly business leaders and founders of companies, and they want to tell their story, because most entrepreneurs start a business because they want to change the world. They want to make the world a better place. That's why I'm so excited about having you on here, is if you can just share with us some of your wisdom of how to tell effective stories so that they can bring their message across of how they want to change the world into a better place. Would you mind just sharing some ideas from your side?
I'd like to take a step back for us to understand why stories are powerful. As we've seen down through the ages, it's story that's helped us survive. It's story that's kept our legacy going. More and more work being done in the area of science, neurology, our brain. We're realizing that our brain is a muscle that needs to be trained, and story is part of the training mechanism. And I think what people need to realize is when you tell a good story, within a few minutes synchronization happens. Research has said if I tell you a good story, within a few minutes or seconds, I can't give you the exact time frame, our brain waves actually sync, which means you're getting in line, you're believing my story. This crosses culture, it makes every word real. And now you're going, if your brain wave is syncing mine, empathy is formed. And so this what happens in a theater. How often have you gone to watch a movie? The lights go down, our phones go off, we sit and watch. And sometimes you can literally hear the audience take a sigh at the same moment. And it's because there's connectivity. Our brain waves have matched an entire group of people with what's going on in the scene. And we go, I get it. I empathize. And there are some movies where the audience actually breaks into applause at the end of the show. Why is that happening? There's collective empathy. There's collective synchronization. We're going, we get it. Well, that's a tool that can be learned, can be harnessed, and can be repeated. We just have to be diligent and willing to put the work in. When we tell a story, oxytocin is released in our brain. It's the feel good hormone. It's the one that makes us think, oh, this feels good. And that builds trust. It allows us to look at things differently. And so, again, if we realize we're syncing our thinking, we're aligning our oxytocin, that story gets to the heart before it gets to the brain. We need to realize that we can look at examples later, how to do that. The moment we can say, when our emotions align, your customers, your children, your students will be in alignment with what you're saying because you have got this sync that says we're on the same page. You see, stories allow us to enter the story, and it's not bullet points and lectures, but it's scenes. And when we watch this, our heart is filled with the scenes. And research says sometimes when you're watching a movie, our brain is actually tricked to thinking we're there. We're walking in Scotland in Outlander. We're walking in outer space in another movie. So that's such an interesting fact that marketers have begun to pull on. Marketers are saying who we're talking to, who's our target audience,
Yes.
where's the world they live in, and what is the best method of getting us to synchronize, making them feel good, and moving from their heart to the head. I think that was the realization is why this works with our thinking, and that we don't have to go, oh, this is just storytellers and people that work in the creative arts field. This is imperative for us to understand how we take in information, how we process it, and how we share it with others. I think we need to know rules instruct, ideas inform, but it's stories that move us. And from the shortest advert, you can sit in a foreign country now, and more marketers aren't even using words when they're telling a story. They're doing the whole thing with visuals. And we get it. The music is there, emotionally we respond, but we get the story because they're following the basic construct of story. They're developing the story and delivering it. And we go, oh, I understand that. That's the key to good storytelling. And I think that's important that we need to know that we need the facts. We're not just going to jump into fairyland, which I know some of my friends who are CEOs go, this is business, not storyland. But I think it's a comparison of both.
Please share those techniques with us because I think that's what I really want to get into as well is, how do you create that connection? How do you get people to buy into the story? It's really, how do you show a little bit of your own heart? Because that's what you do. You create vulnerability in a lot of these stories so that people can connect with you as a person. You're not just there as a company to get money out of me. You're there to have people along for the ride. And I think that's what's so important. So please share some tips and tricks with our audience.
Thank you. The most important element of a story is change. I think just think about sitting at home. If you're watching a movie that's slow burn, nothing happens, the characters don't move, we take the remote and switch the button because nothing has happened. So I think when we start telling our story of our company, of our business, we have to go, what is the change? Can we reflect it? And its most basic principle, the most basic building block of story is tension. And back in early centuries, put together beginning, middle, and end. That's where we have to start our story. What is the current problem? If I was teaching and writing a story, I would call it the current world, the ordinary world, the setup, where this is what's happening. This is our world the way we know it. But there needs to be the dissatisfaction. And I think we all imagine ourselves for the better life. That's what adverts do that are selling deodorant or makeup or perfume. When we see that product, we imagine that if we use that product, we would become a better version of ourselves. And while we know that that's not true, we know when we watch a movie scene that there's actors and lights and camera guys and sound guys, but still for that moment, we suspend disbelief and we hold on to the moment. And that's what needs to happen. We need to say, so what is our problem that our clients are facing? And what is their pursuit? Is it to become thinner? Is it to become richer? Is it to become more beautiful? Is it to become more masculine? All these questions are there. Who are you talking to? And what is their current problem? But then we need a turning point. And that's where your product or your solution comes in. If you look at every outsurance advert, I was doing this, then I met the outsurance guy, and now I'm saving this much. There's a story beginning, middle, and end. Look at all the Weight Watchers. I was like this, and I was discouraged. I was overweight. I didn't feel good about myself. Then I used your project. Now look at what I look like. So at its core, it's that beginning, middle, and end. We faced the scenario, the tension. We could have done A, but we did B. There's the turning point. And now we're successful. So I think if we can all, even in strategic planning, get together and look at a story and go, okay, so what we're facing now, is it down sales, not enough revenue, not enough hits on our YouTube? So what's the current situation? Then we can dream and use our imagination for the turning point. What can we do that's different? We use our imagination. What would we want our company to be? One of the best stories I love telling is the Patagonia story. And I think for me, that's such a good marketing story about a man who in the 1970s loved climbing, loved hiking, but also was an activist for ecology conservation. He takes a double page in the New York Times and says, do not buy this jacket. He's selling climbing wear, boots and jackets. And he says, do not buy this jacket. Well, you would have thought, is that the best? You're trying to sell it. But he knew his audience. So he knew his audience were people who loved the outdoor, who did not want to add waste to the environment, who wanted to save. And so what he did is he said, don't buy this jacket, rather bring it in. We'll fix it and you will save. And then he listed how much water is saved, how much material is saved. And so consumers went, oh my gosh, I'll take my Patagonia jacket in to get fixed. And I have to say, I do not walk past a store when I see a Patagonia logo and think they were committed to saving the environment. So one young man's passion turned into a global company, and it's so successful because he put into action the scenario, what we need. The tension was there's too much waste, there's too much pollution. What did they change? They made a branding that said, we can make the world a better place. So I think that's one of the key examples that I love looking at and telling, because he just followed the steps and the business grew.
Yes. And I think it's that if you have the ability to create a setting that people can connect to, oh, I know that setting, and I think a lot of ads play on that where, oh, yeah, I've been there.
Mhm.
And then identifying where their current position is and where they would need to be, and then positioning yourself in the middle of that transition as a solution to that ideal that they want to achieve. That's when the story becomes real for them, because they can suddenly see you are the solution, the guide that might lead me there. If I walk the walk with you, you are the one that will get me to that ideal outcome that I really want to be. Yeah, that's such a powerful thing.
Leaders, CEOs, community leaders, we do not have to be perfect. More and more consumers, they're not naive anymore. We have a world that has become very informed, very literate. So authenticity carries weight when I go, I didn't quite get it right. We thought we were doing it this way, but we didn't. So the encouragement there is let your story ring with a bell of truth. have the courage to be vulnerable as a guide, as a mentor, as a leader, and go, we were on this track, wasn't getting right, we turned around and this. And instead of pushing people away, what it says is, there's a moment of truth. We've all been there. I think that's what you're saying. We've created a scenario where a consumer goes, I can trust this person. I can trust this product. You know, the story of Starbucks, again, the young man who started Starbucks, Howard Schultz, in the 80s. His dad got ill, no medical aid, no health aid. He had no place to go. And he just starts one coffee shop where people can sit and talk. Well, Starbucks, who needs help knowing where Starbucks is? And a few years ago, I don't know if you remember, it was in the news where people went in and they drank their coffee for several hours and didn't buy another one. And then that store wanted to kick them out. Well, there was a big pushback because he's going, that's not our value. Our story is come to Starbucks, and if you sit on your computer and you don't buy our coffee, you're still welcome. There's the story. So I think storytellers, what is your main message? How will you tell it and how will you live it out? Consumers are going, authenticity comes not from the words of your mouth, but the actions of your hands. So I think that's what we need to push for in our companies, in our leadership. Does our actions follow our words? And our consumers, our followers, our mentors are watching for that more closely than we realize.
I think that's so powerful. The whole idea that your stories and your actions should align. Otherwise, you're actually making yourself a liar. It doesn't help you telling a story to come across as authentic, but then your actions doesn't speak to it. And I think telling the stories of what you want to achieve and how you're going to get there and the values you're going to apply to it brings a certain set of responsibility with it, that you are true to the stories that you're telling and it's not becoming lies out of your mouth, as you said.
Storytellers do that by having individuals reinforce their idea. That's the philosophy behind the Nike adverts. What do? They just have individuals. They tell their story. It's an ordinary person, just like me. Well, not quite like me because they're much more athletic than I am, but ordinary people who live on my street and tell their story. And that's how we reinforce the authenticity. It's not just that it's people who live in a class that's not my own, they're more healthy than me. It's just do it. Whether you're starting, just do it. And so their logo came up with a slogan that says, ordinary people are doing it, so can you. And there's that marriage between your slogan, your product, and how you encourage people to believe your story and then to act it. And they haven't changed that strategy. To this day, every time a new advert comes out, they are telling someone's story who's just done it. And I think in the world we live in, there's so much noise. Many companies are actually employing semioticians, people who look at the signs of the times. Apparently, Coca-Cola has a whole department of people who just going, what's going on? Where are our young people? What's happening politically, geographically, like geopolitically? What's happening and how do we address that with our consumers? And I think that just takes work. So yes, storytelling is our natural default setting, but it takes work to put the structure in place that will invite our consumers into the space, that they will trust us, they will buy our products, and they will follow us.
No, definitely. And I think that what you've just mentioned about understanding where your audience is at, that zeitgeist, what is happening in the mentality of the people? What is happening in their souls at the moment? What are they worried about? If we can connect to that on a human level and tell stories that, gives them hope, that helps them with that change that you want to see, that's when we make those real connections with people. Yeah. So I'm very excited about what our audience are going to do with this. I think I want to also encourage them to just start telling the story of their companies. Just do it. It's such a powerful message. And as you said, people aren't looking for Hollywood production. They just need somebody that tells what they're doing and what problem they're solving in the world and why they are doing it. I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek's book on Start With Why. You can only tell the story of why if you share from your own experience.
Remember that data tells us the what. Your AI is telling us what to say, but it's story and humanity that tells us why. So AI will help you with quantity, speed, but the why question is our human question. Know the why.
Exactly that. Know the why. Diane, it's been such a wonderful session. Thank you very much. There's so much gold in here, so many great tips. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and chat with us. I just want to thank you from my heart that we could see your passion about telling powerful stories. We wish you well in the stories that you tell across Africa and the world, and also the new kid stories you're going to tell your grandchildren. And we really hope that your stories will live on for many, many years.
Great. Well, thank you. Stories are our legacy, personally and corporately. So thank you so much for allowing me the space to do this.
My pleasure.